Hey everyone, welcome to Grow Smarter, brought to you by Toby Agency. I'm Andrew Hong. If you're a healthcare or wellness founder, you know the pressure of making every marketing dollar count. And in few places that pressure higher than when marketing regenerative medicine. Now, we've had Chuck Meeker from Hyagen Medical on the show twice now, and frankly, those episodes have been some of our most engaged content. I got a lot of questions from the email list that I emailed a lot of these clips from Chuck out to. And in the first episode, we broke down the science, right? What stem cells actually do and why most marketing gets it biologically wrong. In the second, we actually tackled the marketing playbook, why you won't get banned from Google, and how to build compliant service pages. So today we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're actually going to get more into the operational side of things, and we're going to shift focus. Because here's the reality. Most compliance risk in a stem cell practice doesn't come from the provider. It comes from the front desk answering a patient's phone call. It comes from the marketing coordinator or your admin writing social media captions. It comes from the agency building your website copy. Now, Chuck is back to give your entire team the compliance framework that they probably need to listen to, and what your front office should say when patients ask about stem cells, what your marketing person needs to stop putting on your website, and what happens when non-compliant language gets flagged. Now, let's get into it. Chuck, great to have you back today. It's been a busy past couple of months for you in Hyagen Medical. How you doing?
Doing great. Always excited to be here, Andrew. Thanks for hosting and inviting me to be part of the discussion. You're absolutely right. The biggest risk in regenerative medicine these days doesn't happen when a practitioner is in a treatment room. There are great quality products on the market. There's great testing. There's great transparency. You can find the products and the training for the procedures in order to make sure that these are safe and also highly effective. The biggest risk that you're facing right now is government regulatory oversight with marketing claims and with the way we advertise stem cell therapy, the benefits that can be received, and what the products actually do. And this occurs at both the state level and the federal level. So at Hyagen Medical, we've been doing a lot of hard work in Washington, D.C., and in states around the country to make sure we have a keen understanding of what the regulatory framework looks like. On a state by state basis, there are professional licensing requirements that practitioners that are conducting healthcare procedures and therapeutic processes need to follow in order to make sure that their state license is kept safe and intact. And there are also federal regulatory guidelines that apply to the products that enter commerce and that are distributed and administered to the body. And it's only when you have a really keen understanding of what those regulatory frameworks are that you can implement sound strategies. So that's the goal that we took upon ourselves. And it's been a fun, wild ride spending time at the Department of Health and Human Services, talking with individuals in the Surgeon General's office,
Yeah.
and those associated with FDA and the powers that be that move stem cell and peptide therapies forward. We've recently joined the advisory board for the American Academy of Peptide Medicine. The peptide
Amazing.
industry is closely related to the stem cell industry. Many of the
Yeah.
same rules apply when it comes to marketing claims and advertising. And so, linking arms and associated with the thought leaders, the framework leaders back in Washington, D.C., was something that we felt strongly about so that we could influence policy and establish industry best practices that can be applied in clinical settings like those run by your clients.
It's interesting and that you meant I'm glad you mentioned sort of you're kind of adjacent to peptides, right? Because um where I was at the A4M conference, the Longevity Plus
Yes.
conference in December, and literally at that show, there were peptide companies that were getting served notice from the FDA and were getting shut down, the next like they're at the show the next day, right? And so it was really interesting because I think all these like research grade peptides and things like that have been out there. That is that gray market that we're trying to kind of avoid. And I think what Hyogen has been trying to do is like, let's not let what happened there in the peptide market happen to what we're doing here, because you guys are sourcing, your stem cells from the right places. You're doing it from FDA compliant and approved facilities, right? And we'll get into like, how you guys do that. But, it's interesting. And especially now with everything going on with the administration, I think like opening eyes a little bit more to this and,
Absolutely.
maybe, I think, maybe not just applying like a one size fits all sort of approach to it, right? And looking at it differently, I think is a great thing for providers who want to provide this type of service. But it also means that you got to do it by the book, right?
Yeah,
And
if you don't mind, we might start there. I mean,
yeah,
it's
please,
certainly
yeah,
not a one size fits all approach, but it's
yeah,
designed to be a default, right?
right,
If you're putting something into the human body, it's a drug regulated by the FDA as a drug unless there is an alternative regulatory pathway for it. That's the way they set up the federal regulatory scheme to keep people safe. In connection with the Centers for Disease Control and the Surgeon General's office, they wanted to make sure that if you're putting something into the human body, it's a food or it's a drug. And they're going to regulate it as such unless you have a carve out. Now, what are some of the industries that have carve outs? Well, the supplement industry, for
hmm,
example, has a regulatory pathway that doesn't require an FDA drug approval. You can go and get glucosamine and echinacea and creatine at the store, and you don't have to have an FDA approval or prescription or anything like that for it. In connection with their carve out, there are certain regulatory requirements. You'll notice that the label says these claims have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration. That was the compromise
yep,
for having natural supplements. They also have to state this product is not intended to treat, cure, diagnose, or mitigate
yep,
any disease or condition, right? So, stating clearly this is not an approved drug product and it's not intended to treat or cure is a compromise that the supplement industry was able to. Now, what they can do is they can make what are called structure function claims, right? Where this product supports gut health, this product
yep,
alleviates, brain fog. These
yep.
structural function related claims, not saying it cures or it
It
treats,
solves it or it fixes it.
solves an issue
Yeah,
or it works
yep,
with the body to support the natural processes.
yep,
The stem cell industry does not have that kind of a compromise with the FDA. What we have is a regulatory pathway called, well, it's referred to lovingly as the 361 pathway. It comes from Section 361 of the Public Health Service Act. And that act allows the FDA to work with the CDC to find a subset of products that are ultra low risk of any adverse reaction because of their relevant biological nature. In this case, human cells, human tissues, and cellular and tissue based products. Human cells, tissues, and tissue based products, often referred to as HCTPs. So these 361 HCTPs, when you look at them, it's going from one human to another human with a very low risk of causing an adverse reaction. So we're going to regulate them differently. As long as they're sourced properly, processed properly, registered appropriately, and comply with the guidelines for labeling, intended use, minimal manipulation, registration, and others, then you don't require pre-market authorization or a drug approval in order to enter the market with the products. So any provider who wants to administer stem cell therapy needs to understand this compliance pathway and know how to confirm with their provider, their supplier, that the products they're receiving are truly 361 compliant HCTPs. Everything starts there. Okay? That is the barrier to entry that every clinical practitioner should require. Prove to me that this product meets all the guideline requirements for being regulated only as an HCTP under 361. Then from there, you know that it's a legal, compliant product according to the FDA, your job as a clinical provider is not to screw it up. And what I mean by that is
The framework has been set up for you guys
that's
already,
that's
right?
right.
Like
We did
you
all
just have
the
to
hard
follow
work.
it.
Okay. Now, the only thing that you have left to do is not transform that HCTP back into a drug product by talking about it as if it was a drug. Okay, this is what your whole topic is about, Andrew,
Yep.
is how do we avoid applying unneeded, unwanted scrutiny to something that's
Right.
already legal by stepping over our own words? Okay, so let's break it down.
Yep.
The FD&C Act at the FDA, this is like the big, Food and Drug Act. The FD&C Act requires that only drugs that are tested and scrutinized and audited and approved by the FDA can make claims about treating and curing and diagnosing diseases unless you have something else that the FDA requires. So there's an intermediate path referred to as a biologics license. So for
Yep.
biologic products, you could submit a biologics license application, and the FDA can come in and scrutinize and audit and review your whole process and procedure and your products and say, you know what, based on the data that you have, you can actually make a claim about this biological product, even though it's not a drug that's been approved because we've licensed you. Unless
Yep.
you have an FDA approval or a biologics license, you cannot make claims. So, what are claims? Here's where everyone wants to start taking notes. Everything else was just background. It was like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fun.
This is
Let's
this is
learn and
this is the
everything.
meat.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks for bringing us up to speed. Now's where you want to take notes. These are the things that you need to avoid when you're marketing anything that you don't want the FDA to over scrutinize. Okay. Number one, do not link the product or its ingredients to any disease or condition. Okay. You don't want to ever say stem cells for treating autism,
Yep.
stem cells for addressing brain fog, right? These are conditions, diseases, issues that the human body faces, and you don't want to ever link those two things together. Again, like we talked about the first time, it's not just because it's regulatorily non-compliant, it's because
It's
it's
wrong.
biologically
Yeah.
inaccurate.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Right?
wrong. That's
The
right. Yeah,
stem
yeah.
cell does not
Yep.
reduce inflammation in the body. The stem cell does not heal a damaged shoulder. The stem cell does not fix or cure autism or reduce brain fog. A stem cell is nothing more or less than a delivery vehicle for natural biological paracrine signaling factors, growth factors, and cytokines. They're already found everywhere in our body, albeit in small supply. And we use stem cells as a delivery system for supplementing your body with these natural biofactors. Now, what do the biological growth factors and cytokines do in your body? We know that because the literature has been published for decades. Those growth factors will bind to cell receptors in the body and they will activate the body's natural healing pathways. Okay? The stem cell doesn't activate the body's natural healing pathways, which is number two. You're still taking notes, right? Number two, don't link the stem cell to the structure or function of the body. It's not just diseases and conditions, it's stem cells don't address or influence the structure or function of the body. Stem cells don't repair shoulder injury and damage. Stem cells don't activate the body's natural healing capacity. Stem cells simply carry and deliver natural biomolecules. Full stop. Now,
Yep.
those natural biomolecules have been
What
shown in
are
the
they? Yeah.
literature to bind the cell receptors in your own body, and that binding event is known to activate cellular regenerative pathways. But you've got to keep your talk track straight, or else you end up using clinical shorthand like stem cells reduce inflammation. So let's pause for just a second. What reduces inflammation in the body? The body's cellular anti inflammatory pathways reduce inflammation. right?
We have that already inside of us. And when we get older, sure, that sort of decreases, right? But we all have that inside of us already, right?
Nail on the head, Andrew.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We are innately built. We are evolutionarily designed. We are divinely constructed. Whatever the nature of your view of the body is, we can heal ourselves if our cellular pathways are functioning and working properly. The only thing that regenerative medicine seeks to do is ensure that the body is functioning properly at a cellular and tissue level.
Uh-huh.
Okay. If our bodies had the right amounts of the right growth factors and cytokines, we would all be healing to the appropriate degree. Case in point, when you were in elementary school and you sprained your ankle on the playground and you went to the nurse's office and she iced it for 30 minutes and then wrapped it in an ace bandage and you went home and elevated it overnight and you were on crutches for 2 days to stay off of it. And then you started running around again.
Yep.
Why were you able to heal so quickly? It's because at a young age, your body is flooded with these growth factors and cytokines that accelerate our body's natural healing processes. And like you said so keenly, as we age, these processes turn down largely because the signaling molecules, the growth factors and cytokines, have changed their production quality and quantity. We call
Yep.
it gene expression. The gene expression that produces these molecules in the body has changed over time. So now we're left with a situation where we say, oh, the body no longer has the capacity in itself to keep these pathways turned on to the full degree. So what do? Well, we try and alleviate the things that are pressing down on the pathway, things like an inflammatory diet and bad habits, smoking and drinking and things like
Yep.
that. And then we provide the growth factors and cytokines that we know naturally turn those pathways on. If we could go down to a drugstore and buy each of the growth factors individually, we would just be taking natural supplements, protein supplements, right?
Yep. Yep.
But that's cost prohibitive. We have to find a source for an entourage, a profile, a portfolio of all of those growth factors and cytokines. So where are you going to find them? Well, you find them in the birth tissue stem cells, like the umbilical cord blood derived stem cells. Those stem cells are biologically equipped and loaded with those same growth factors and cytokines, and they circulate through the growing baby's body, the fetal circulatory system, to deliver all of those growth factors and cytokines during a time when developmental growth and regenerative repair is critical. Embryonic and fetal growth and development, human development.
Umbilical cord tissue is not the only place you can get stem cells from, right?
That's
Um,
absolutely correct.
why is it that you guys source where you guys source your stem cells from is from donated umbilical cords? What about that from a compliance or even efficacy standpoint is why is that important to Hyagen Medical and the way that you guys do business?
Yeah, so I would say there's three main things. The first is ethics. The second is, like you said, compliance, and the third is efficacy. So,
Yep.
I mean, from an ethical standpoint, we want to make sure that we're not dealing with embryonic stem cells. There was a lot
Yes.
of sketchy research back in the days. There were fetuses being aborted in order to harvest embryonic stem cells. Even IVF banks, they were taking fertilized eggs that no longer wanted to be used and they were populating these in the lab to grow more and more of the embryonic stem cells. So
Yep.
it's illegal here in the US and it should be ethically shunned everywhere in the world for whether it's for moral or religious reasons or safety concerns. These embryonic stem cells do have the capacity to grow into all kinds of different tissues. They're pre programmed to do that. And so research has found them growing into tumors and other masses in the body.
Oh,
So
really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
so so that kind of ethical and safety concern is number one. As far as efficacy is concerned, the growth factors and cytokines found in umbilical cord blood stem cells, for example, are brand new.
Yep.
They're perfect. They're day one. They haven't aged at all. They've been perfectly built by this human growth and development powerhouse called the placenta, which is controlling the growth of this new human being. And so they're of the highest quality. Andrew, in your fat tissue, if you had any, my lean friend, or in your bone marrow, you have archives of your own um, stem cells.
Yep.
So you could go into a number of different regenerative clinics that do bone marrow aspirate concentrate. The acronym is
Painful, I assume.
BP, right? And they could drill into the iliac
Yep.
crest of your hip, pull out your bone marrow, purify the stem cells out of that, and say, I've got Andrew specific stem cells that I'm going to inject into your shoulder. And there's a full regulatory compliance pathway for using those, what we call autologous stem cells, going
Exactly. Yep.
from the donor back into the donor as the patient. The problem is, you're not as young as you used to be. If your body was already working to bring about regenerative repair, your shoulder would probably have been able to heal itself. So taking your own stem cells, concentrating them, injecting them into your shoulder, and hoping that you're going to get a beneficial effect, we've seen it, but not with the same level of success as using
Yeah.
the day one stem cells with all
So
of their
using
power.
your own stem cells and purify them, putting them back into you is compliant,
Yes.
but not as it's not as the efficacy is not as good, right?
Yeah, I would say lots of people have had great success with this for
Yeah.
years and years and years. This was the best we could do. It,
Yep.
it was in many ways superior to PRP. You've heard of
Yeah, yeah, sure.
rich plasma. That's where
Yep.
you take the patient's own blood and you
Spin it
purify
up.
out
Yeah, yeah.
the healing factors from the platelets. Okay.
Yep.
Loved it. This was a really good way for healthy young athletes to
Yep.
heal from muscle tears and strains and things like that.
Recover faster, all that
That's
kind of
right. But
stuff.
in an
Yeah.
aging population, your blood is depleted in those factors anyways.
Right. Right.
Bone marrow aspirate concentrate stem cells is another great way for young, vibrant people to have an immediate source of stem cells. But for the fact that we've got an even better source in the placental tissues. And
Yep.
and I want to point out,
So actually, you're compliant and there's efficacy there, right?
that's
Like this is
right.
the best. This is the best quality, but we're not skirting any regulations or lines of compliance or anything like that, right? And this is a. Would you say this is a relatively new development in the world of regenerative medicine, or it's starting to break out now?
So relatively new as in the past decade or
Yeah.
two in the US,
Yeah.
but not overseas. I mean,
Right.
south of the border and over in Europe, it's been they're 20 to 30 years ahead of us in using stem cells.
Yeah.
Because of the regulatory scrutiny that we've had here in the US. I think there's, to a large degree, there's been a misunderstanding of the regulatory scrutiny. I know our topic today is on the marketing compliance. If
Yeah.
everyone had been doing this correctly the entire time, we would be so much further ahead in our clinical use cases because we wouldn't have been making claims about what unapproved drug stem cell products are doing, right?
Peptides.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, right.
peptides, right?
Yeah,
And
so
the mess that
it's
we've gotten ourselves into.
yeah,
Like it's become a thing in pop culture, right? Like, you're hearing about Timu peptides and all these biohackers doing things when people are like looking up protocols on Chat GPT and not working with sure, that's kind of a slippery slope to, some dangerous things potentially happening out there,
oh,
right? And
it's a cliffhanger. I mean,
yeah,
you're
I mean,
jumping off. It's not just a slippery slope. It's a cliff you could literally jump off of.
yep, and I think the government acted pretty quickly with all of this, because I do think that the government sees the power in all of this, but also doesn't want to let it just become like the wild, wild west, right? And
Yeah.
there's
So
almost like really medical grade stuff like being regulated like supplements almost, or people treating the regulations like supplements almost, and they were injecting themselves and doing all these things with it that just kind of left an icky feeling around the industry. And I
sure.
I think with the power of all the regenerative medicine and specifically stem cells, it's like again, I want to keep talking to you and putting your message in front of our audience because I think there is a huge transformational power here, but we got to be very careful with how it's messaged, with how, with who's using it, how they're using it, how they're using it with their patients. And again, the peptides kind of crosses over this a lot because that's a very recent memory kind of, and we're still kind of, living through this a little bit, right? But that again, I think that's a big thing in the philosophy of Hyagen that I where you educate your providers, right? And I think that was a value proposition when there's a provider that's interested in speaking to you. One of the parts of your quote unquote sales pitch, right, is that, hey, we're here to train you guys and make sure that you're doing it the right way and you're saying the right things. Um, so I think that's a big part of why you're here to talk to our audience. But maybe if we sort of move towards talking about the front office, right?
Yeah.
And maybe to give the audience a little bit of context, like I met Chuck because he was actually giving a training session to a mutual client, and I'd never seen. I mean, I'd never seen a stem cell rep. I'm going to call you a rep, okay, Chuck, even though you're the founder of the company.
Fair enough.
But I'd never seen this kind of approach, and because you've got a law, you have a law background, you've got a biochemistry background, right, and you've got a PhD, like you understand this from the medical and the legal perspective. So tell me a little bit about what you
Mhm.
see out there in the field, right? Like with the front desk, we kind of talked about in the intro, like they're potentially a big source of compliance issues. And I'm
Yes.
kind of curious, like what have you seen there? What kind of stories have you heard there in the field with the practices that you're working with when it comes to saying the right or wrong things about regenerative medicine, stem cell therapy?
Yeah. So there's two ends of the pendulum here.
Yeah.
On the on the first end are people that don't say anything at all. They'll answer the phone, someone will be asking about stem cell therapy, and they'll say, "I can schedule you for a consult to talk with the doctor." And they literally will not say anything. And
Yeah.
patients find it incredibly dissatisfying, right? They're not getting any information. Can I find out like where the stem cells are from? Can I find out what procedures you do? You can set an appointment to consult with one of our healthcare providers, and that's all they're trained to say. Many times this is because their stem cell provider, their sales rep, as you said, will tell them, you can't say anything. You can't
Yeah.
even use the word stem cell because if you do, that could be a federal agent on the
Right.
line who comes in and shuts your clinic down, right? It's a bunch of fear mongering that's based on
Yep.
bad information. The
Yep.
term stem cell is not the boogeyman.
Yep.
The way the modalities that you're using to administer them is not a problem. You can say, yes, we do stem cell injections. I would say that all day long. Yeah, we do stem cell shoulder injections. We do stem cell scalp injections. We do stem cell back injections. You haven't made a claim about what the stem cells are
Exactly.
treating or doing or addressing. Um, you've just simply said what your route of administration is. And the FDA doesn't regulate the practice of medicine at the state level. They regulate
Right.
products and devices, right? And so if
Yep.
you're dealing with a product that's non-compliant, they're going to have an issue with you. And one of the ways that the product becomes non-compliant is by making a drug claim about a product that's not an approved drug. Okay, so on the other end of the pendulum is people that want to say everything under the sun. And we refer to this as using clinical shorthand, right?
Okay.
They jump from stem cells all the way to what outcome they're hoping for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Stem cells can alleviate, stem cells can enhance, stem cells can fix, stem cells can cure. And sometimes they'll try and get cute and they'll say, I can't make any claims about outcomes, but, and then in the next breath, they'll be like, we've got patients who have received stem cell therapy and are walking again. And, just making all kinds of claims about what the stem cells will do. And like I love to say, not only is that regulatorily non-compliant, it's biologically inaccurate. So if we can all live in the same universe of what stem cells actually do, you end up stumbling into compliant language by being accurate biologically. Okay, so let's go through some examples.
Yep.
Someone calls in and says, I um, separated my shoulder 6 months ago. I've had it in a sling. I've been in physical therapy. I'm just not getting the results that I want. I still have pain. I still have stiffness. You guys do stem cell injections. Can it help heal my shoulder the rest of the way and
That's a
reduce
good
the
one.
pain that I have?
Yep.
Right? That's the patient's asking a direct question. Will stem cells help me continue to heal and reduce my pain? Now, we don't need to be naysayers, and we don't need to shame the patient and say that's not what stem cells do, right? But we can very quickly and easily direct the patient towards an understanding by saying, we'd love to have a more in-depth conversation with you, but at our clinic, we use stem cell therapy therapeutically for the same reason or the same purpose that stem cells are used biologically, and that is they contain the natural biofactors that bind to your body's receptors and activate your body's ability to heal. Sometimes the front desk people will say, stem cells don't reduce inflammation. Your body can reduce inflammation, and we use stem cells as a therapy because they carry the natural biofactors that are involved in binding your cells to turn on your body's ability to reduce inflammation. And I'll say that's much more satisfying for a lot of patients to hear. When they're told stem cells will fix it, oh, yeah, stem cells can cure that. It's like it doesn't pass the smell test half the time.
Yeah.
But if you'll tell a patient, look, the reason why you're experiencing pain in your shoulder is because there's latent information and cellular debris in the area that's pushing on nerve endings. 99 times out of 100, it's not that the issue hasn't healed all the way. It's that there's still chronic inflammation and cellular debris and scar tissue in the area that is impinging proper movement and pushing against nerve endings. So, what our goal is at a clinical level is to activate the body's ability to reduce inflammation and clear out cellular debris and scar tissue. And the way we do that is by delivering the natural biomolecules that turn on the body's ability to do that for itself. And where we get those biomolecules is from umbilical cord blood stem cells. So what you saw there was you can either walk it forward, start with what stem cells are, what they carry, and what those biomolecules are known to do and what the outcome of that is, or you can start with what outcome you want and walk backwards through biology. What we want is to have the body reduce inflammation. We know how to make that happen. We just need to deliver the right inflammation reducing signal to your body so it can do it itself. Those signals are found in natural cytokines, and stem cells are full of the natural cytokines that we need. At no point in that conversation did you say stem cells are going to reduce inflammation. You didn't even say stem cells are going to activate the body's ability to reduce inflammation. You referred to the stem cells as the delivery vehicle for the cytokine molecules that bind the body's cell receptors. That binding event absolutely activates a cellular pathway, but it wasn't the stem cell that activated the pathway or caused the reduction. Okay, so what if you're an aesthetics clinic? What if you're
Yep.
using stem cells to do scalp injections,
Yep.
right? Your goal is to restore the hair's thickness and follicle number, right? The body has the ability to grow thick, vibrant hair. It does.
Yep. Naturally occurs.
It happens. It
Everyone
happens
starts with
all
it,
the
right?
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
most everybody starts with a thick, full head of
Most.
hair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you no longer have a thick, full head of hair, something happened to take that away from you.
Hmm.
Okay. Typically, it is hormone imbalanced meets inflammatory lifestyle meets lack of blood flow. Okay. We want to enhance the body's ability to support healthy blood flow in the scalp and reduce inflammation and cellular debris in the area, activating the body's natural follicle growth pathways. We know how to make that happen. We just need the right growth factors and cytokines that are associated with those pathways activation mechanism.
Yep.
Those growth factors and cytokines are found in abundance in umbilical cord blood stem cells. So we use umbilical cord blood stem cells injected into the scalp to deliver those natural biomolecules. At no point in time did you say stem cells will increase circulation in the scalp. At
Right.
no point did you say stem cells will cause a reduction in inflammation and an increase in thick hair growth. Why? Because that's not what happens biologically, and it's not a compliant talk track either. So if we can all stay on this kind of train together, you'll avoid unnecessary scrutiny and you'll give real biology to patients. And the same thing, on and on and on. It really doesn't matter what you're using stem cells for. People say, well, what about stem cell IV infusion?
Yep.
Okay, what's your purpose? What's your purpose? Well, I've got brain fog. Good. Brain fog is a label that you're putting on something. What is
Right.
brain fog? Well, it's confusion, it's memory, it's focus, it's all these types of things. I said, yeah, again, you're taking a collection of symptoms. What's causing that to happen? And then people will jump all the way to the beginning and say, well, I was in a car accident, or I took a vaccine,
Yep.
or something along those lines. And I'm like, no, 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 that's the trigger. You're skipping this most important thing. It's not the name brain fog. It's not the collection of symptoms, and it's not the trigger. It's the cause right here. What's causing the brain fog? Well, it's an accumulation of inflammatory factors in the brain, the cranium, that aren't getting cleared away, together with dead and dying neurons that are gumming up the system with cellular debris and scar tissue, which is inhibiting proper blood flow and cell turnover to create the right kind of neurological environment. And they go, that's what's causing brain fog? And you go, yeah, that's what's causing your symptoms. And we call that brain fog. So all we need to do is turn on the body's ability to reduce inflammation in the brain and to clear out cellular debris and scar tissue and to enhance the proper blood flow and cell turnover and growth pathways to restore that function in the brain. The body is equipped to do that itself. The pathways already exist. Great. How do we turn on those pathways? It's actually pretty simple. We just have to deliver the right biomolecules that signal those pathways to be turned on. Great. Where do we get those biomolecules? We get them from umbilical cord blood stem cells, and specifically the exosomes that are secreted from those stem cells because
Yep.
they're small enough to cross the blood brain barrier. So now an umbilical cord blood secreted exosome becomes a delivery packet for crossing the blood brain barrier to deliver biomolecules in the relevant area. Those biomolecules bind to cell receptors in the tissue, the brain tissue, which activates cellular pathways, causing the cells to work together to accomplish what we wanted in the first place, which is the clearing away of cellular debris and scar tissue, the decrease of inflammation, the enhancement of proper healthy blood flow, and the turnover of cells. What happens? Well, all the symptoms begin to fade away. We find people having an easier time remembering and focusing and balancing and all of the things that they called brain fog that were a collection of symptoms. And people say, stem cell therapy fixed my brain fog. And I go, yeah, I get it. It's fun to say stem cell therapy reduced my brain fog, but that's not what stem cell therapy did.
Yeah.
Okay. The body did that. Your
Yep.
cells, your cellular pathways reduced all of these symptoms that you're labeling brain fog, but the stem cells did nothing more or less than secrete these tiny little exosomes full of growth factors and cytokines that are like structurally designed to fit into a binding pocket or associate with a biomolecule in your cells in order to activate a signaling pathway that causes the cells to work together and do something. I'm sorry for geeking out over biochemistry, but like I haven't made this more difficult than it needs to be. We've used
Right.
very, very basic layperson's terms at this point. Maybe growth factor, maybe cytokine, maybe molecular cellular pathway are a little bit elevated, but they're not things that people can't comprehend. If I
And I
were to,
think in it even in layman's terms, it's like, if you're the front office staff or you're explaining this to the front office, and they may not be medical professionals, right? Your front office. Um, it's almost like we're giving your body more of what it already has, right? And it needs, in this specific instance, you have an injury or something like it needs more of these exosomes and cytokines to repair itself properly, right? It probably needs better ones. And so the reality of it is like you're, as long as you're saying that, and again, the analogy that you use is the stem cells don't do anything. They're just a truck, right? It's the stuff that's in the dump truck. It's the sand. It's the whatever that's actually in the dump truck that matters, right? But all stem cells are a dump truck, right?
Yeah. One of these
That's
days,
all they are.
one of these days, I'm going to hear from FedEx and UPS saying, stop referring to your stem cells as UPS trucks or FedEx trucks, or maybe they love it. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that's what they are. They are
Yeah.
delivery vehicles. You can call them vesicles if you want, or delivery cells, but that's what they're doing is they're dropping off cargo that performs a certain function. The stem
Yep.
cell doesn't do what you think it does. And I think that I want to be clear though, there is a whole nother industry for stem cell transplantation, cell therapy in the body. This is where the stem cells have been modified and altered and manipulated in a laboratory setting to become a cell type that can incorporate into the body. This is nowhere do we see this more established right now than in the diabetes field, type 1 diabetes, right?
Yeah.
They'll take
Hmm.
stem cells and they'll migrate them. I don't want to use migrate. They'll differentiate them down islet pathways, pancreatic islet pathways, and cause these stem cells to become insulin producing cells. And then they'll
Fascinating. Huh.
transplant them into the pancreas of a type 1 diabetic, put them on immunosuppressants to keep those cells in the pancreas. And a type 1 diabetic produces insulin for the first time in their life in their own pancreas.
Incredible. Wow.
Outstanding, right?
Wow.
That's not what we're doing at
Yeah.
regenerative medicine. It's med spas. We're not
We're
doing
not
those things.
changing anything, right?
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
We're taking unmodified,
Yeah.
minimally or unmanipulated umbilical cord blood
Organic
stem
from the
cells.
source, you know?
Exactly. And we're just saying, hey, you know how you were functioning in the womb? Keep doing that. I just want you to do it over here instead. Drop off
Yeah,
that
yep.
cargo right here.
That's right,
The other
that's
thing
right.
that's I think is most critical to point out is to the degree that anyone listening to this already feels overwhelmed with how am I going to develop this talk track specific for me and train my front office, don't worry. That's what we're here for.
Yep,
Just go to hyagenmedical.com and put your information in the request form. We can put together a very specific talk track for you, things that your front office can memorize or have a cheat sheet right by the phone, right by the desk. So when someone walks up, they can hand them a card and say, this might help you understand what stem cell therapy will
totally.
do. You see, right here, stem cells are full of natural biological human growth factors and cytokines. Those are a key component of what we're doing because your body recognizes those molecules and they're binding your cells and turning on the pathways that allow your body to heal and regenerate itself.
Yep.
And people go, "Oh, that's great. Can I set an appointment to learn more? Can I schedule a time to?" And so um, we're here for you. We're here to support you. And
Yeah,
I don't want you to feel like you're in this journey alone and you have to take this podcast or this clip and
yeah.
generate your own stuff. There are resources for you to help in this
Yeah,
process.
and the way I think Hyogen has put together a lot of these materials, I reference them when I'm writing marketing materials, right? And so they're made, they're kind of built in plain language, right? I think one thing, Chuck, you clearly know the customer, right? And the type of customer that you're working with. A lot of these are small businesses, right? And so when you the way and as I gather more and more, and every time we talk, more sort of analogies kind of come into my head. Um, think about the financial industry, right? The investment industry and the types of claims they're not allowed to make.
Oh,
If you
sure.
buy this annuity, you buy this security, you buy this, you can never, you can't use the word guaranteed. It's just a big no-no word, right? In the financial industry. And so, it's very similar. It's almost like if you say, "Oh, stem cells treat autism, or stem cells treat, treat X, Y, and Z, right? It's almost like you're going up to someone and saying, "Oh, if you buy this stock, you're guaranteed a 20% return," right? And we all know that's a big no-no, right? When it comes to anything financial or banking kind of related. And so I see a very similar sort of thing here where you're dealing with somewhat sophisticated, it's a little sophisticated, and the knowledge tends to be more on the provider. In some cases now, actually, and what we're finding is that the people who are interested in stem cell therapy tend to be very highly researched, right? They
Mm.
actually they do their research, and they look up a lot of information. There's also a lot of bad information that's out there. And I will say that from a search engine optimization perspective, like if you want to get found on Google, and frankly, even more these days, people want to get found on ChatGPT and Gemini, right? Um, if you put out the quality information on your blog, on your service pages, on your website, the kind of stuff that Chuck is talking about, and that you actually try to differentiate yourself by saying, "Hey, we source our stem cells from an FDA compliant vendor," right? We make sure that, all of the things that kind of Chuck described in his talk track about how they source it, why they source it, the efficacy, that gives you a lot of authority to the AI search engines. And the audience that is typically looking for this type of regenerative medicine, specifically stem cell therapy, they have a high propensity to start their searches on places like Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, versus Google or any of the traditional kind of search engines, right? And if you're a practice out there, and I'm fortunate that I actually work with a lot of practices where, the founder really scrutinizes the vendors that he or she works with, right? And um, you'll find that, as you put out more of that content, it helps you build authority and thought leadership in that space. And it differentiates you from everyone else that might be that sort of gray area compliance, wellness clinic or longevity clinic like up the street, right? And so, as I think the competition starts to heat up, I was just talking, in fact, Chuck, there was a gentleman in Arizona who reached out. I got a phone call from him this week who said that he saw one of our episodes, and he's like an entrepreneur, decided to partner up with a medical director, and is going to start a regenerative medicine clinic in Arizona. And he saw our episode, and he said, "Hey, I'm just going to let you know, when we get our practice up and running, we're reaching out. We're talking to Chuck, right?" So I see this like I'm getting more of these inbounds every day, because as a marketing agency, a lot of folks are coming to us now to say, "Hey, we want to start offering this. We don't know how to do it," right? And I will say that from a search engine perspective, like, there are ways that you can get found. You can also run ads now, right? And, but there's a lot of compliance around running ads on Google, on Facebook, and Meta, that you have to be concerned with if you are looking to go down that channel. But, overall, I think with the just the sheer amount of interest that's growing in this area, and Chuck, I'm sure you have a front seat to it with, with the world that you're in. I think it's so important that we communicate and message this correctly, and that we don't turn this into kind of the Wild West, right? And we don't market it and talk about it like we do like supplements, right? Because this is such a powerative, and I think I was telling my wife the other day, it's like, when we're our parents' age right now, we may have the quality of life that we have right now, right? And I see that, and I see that the government is starting to open up to to allowing these pathways, and kind of carving out these all the different carve outs that you talked about in the beginning. I just don't want us to mess this up, because I see a world where, with the health in our country being so bad right now, that this could actually be the thing that turns the tide as it goes into the mainstream, right? And so that's really why I advocate for this, and why I think, you've been a great partner in helping us, kind of spread the message there with our providers and all the practices that we work with.
I love the notion of, I don't want to see this get screwed up. That's so
Yeah.
true, right? can we elevate the practice of regenerative medicine together as a community by getting on the same page? And I'll tell you, it's validating for us when we see clinics roll this out
Mm.
and they're able to, like you mentioned briefly, run paid ads for stem cell therapy when they're complying with the requirements that
Yep.
the legal departments of some of these certifying entities use.
Yep.
It's incredibly validating for us to see that the Hyagen Medical product suite and talk track provide the ability for clinicians not only to administer regenerative medicine, but to advertise them effectively and get the word out there and excel in the marketplace. So you're doing the right work, Andrew, in helping people understand this and keeping people safe in an industry that is incredibly well regulated and needs to have that additional support and help. So bravo to you and thanks so much.
Yeah, and thanks for helping us, Chuck. I really appreciate your time and just dropping all the knowledge. And like I said, like when we put these episodes out or the clips from these episodes out there, they tend to be some of the most engaged from our longevity and kind of wellness audience. So what do you guys have? I know you guys have some stuff, in the fall, I think, coming up. What's new for Hyogen? And do you have any announcements or anything that you'd like to share with our audience?
Sure. Yeah. So every month we're doing continuing education webinars. Sometimes this will focus on products and applications.
Oh,
Sometimes this
cool.
will focus on legal and regulatory, marketing and advertising, clinical applications. We've received a ton of requests for hands-on immersive training. How do
Mhm.
we administer these properly? And so in July, we'll be hosting a clinical immersion training at Harry Adelson's Docere Clinics in Park City, Utah. Harry Adelson is the godfather of stem cell therapy here in Utah, one of the very first practitioners to move PRP into autologous bone marrow aspirate into birth tissue derived stem cells. And we were thrilled when he said, I would love to train Hyagen
Awesome.
medical practitioners. And so we're doing that in July. You can find more information on our website, hyagenmedical.com. We continue to work with the federal regulators in Washington, D.C. We're looking to schedule roundtable discussions where Main Street industry experts can come in and talk with DC regulators to get a balanced approach to how to move common sense regulation and even legislation forward. We are monitoring and working with governors and legislatures at the
Love
state
it.
level who are trying to put state legislative protections in place that help practitioners not feel so worried that their license will be suspended or revoked. And
Like our
we,
great state here in Utah, right?
boom, yep, love it. And just to give a little teaser, we are working with LegitScript to find a fast track path forward for compliant stem cell providers to receive LegitScript certification
Yep.
when their products are compliant with federal regulations and their marketing language is compliant with FD&C talk tracks. So it's a huge, huge step forward and more to come
That's
on that
big.
later.
Yeah, we'll talk. We'll have to do another episode on that later. But as a marketer who has to kind of navigate these fields, and again, Google has a certain way that they approach, marketing, longevity medicine, wellness, healthcare. Meta has their own way of doing it too, but it's very challenging to run ads if you're not legit script certified. And I will say that the practices that do get legit script certified and that go through the audit and take care of all the paperwork that they need to do to get it. It's not cheap. It's not necessarily easy, but I will say that those practices tend to run a pretty tight ship, you know, and when and you can tell like they have a vision, and that vision is carried not only from the strategy layer all the way down to the operational layer and how their front desk operates and all those sorts of things. And so to see, from, we've known each other close to a year now and met about a year ago, but to see like where you guys are now and now to hear that you're driving policy, that you are, um, putting some like working with these third-party vendors like LegitScript, who carry a lot of weight in this industry, frankly, it actually allows me to identify the good providers that we really need to work with, who see that as the right investment to make in their practices. It's awesome just to see like where you guys have come, and that you guys are actually, seems like you're starting to become leaders, in this really growing space. So thanks as always, Chuck, for sharing your knowledge. I will share links to the webinars, to the upcoming, events in July, as well as your training, in the fall as well. And we'll share that with our audience, and we'll give all the information. So please reach out to Chuck and his team if you're interested. I know there's so much interest in there. And frankly, I talk to a lot of providers who just don't even want to wade the waters because they're afraid of the compliance issues around it. And
That's why
if
we're here.
yeah. And if
Yeah.
that's you, like Chuck's your guy. I mean, the guy is literally a lawyer, right? And so, he's got your back, and the training materials that, they provide to you are a result of, I think, Chuck's background and kind of building that into the DNA of the company to differentiate themselves from any of the other, stem cell companies that are out there. So thanks as always, Chuck. Great to have you, and look forward to talking to you on the next one.
Thanks, Andrew. Be well, everyone.